3 hard knocks. My dog Bear let out that old man growl he saves for things that don't smell right. And under the porch light, a plastic badge flashed like a toy prize clipped to a neat polo. I didn't open the door. I opened the gun safe. HOA enforcement. The guy barked. On land with no HOA. Yeah, that happened. I cracked the door just enough for him to see the steel at my hip and the real badge on my belt, the same one that rode with me through 24 years of state police work. And I watched the air go out of him, like a tire hitting a curb. "You're on private land," I said, calm enough to set a level, "and you're pretending to be something you're not." He flinched, eyes flicking past me to Bear's hackles, then bolted off the porch like a rabbit. But I didn't chase because the timber was breathing. A second shadow held still in the pines watching. And I've lived long enough to tell the difference between a coward running and a plan waiting. I locked the door, leaned my forehead against the frame, and felt that old pilot light catch inside me. Not fear, not anger, yet, just resolve. My name's Cole Hartigan. I buried my wife, sold the house we thought we'd grow old in, and drove until the mountains of Red Willow County slowed my breathing. 42 acres at the end of a gravel road creek, with no name, quiet so clean you could taste it. Half a mile south, a gated miracle of fountains and matching mailboxes called Silver Mesa Preserve. I'm not part of it, that was the point. Week 3, I found a zip-tied letter at my gate, red ink, and big words. Silver Mesa Notice, Unauthorized Construction. Cease or face consequences. No seal, no signature, just the kind of tone people use when they think paper is power. I laughed. Showed it to Walt at the feed store, and he didn't laugh. He grunted and said, "They've been sending boys around private patrols and pretend tickets. Folks fold," and he looked at me like he was measuring the kind of man I was. 2 days later, my power died. Utility truck rolled in with a forged disconnect order. The older lineman scratched his head and said, "Wouldn't be the first since Silver Mesa went up and turned me back on." That night, I sat on the porch with Bear snoring at my boots, shotgun across my lap like an old friend. Not because I was scared, but because harassment is never the first move. It's the middle. You know what I mean, Sheriff. Tessa McCaffrey. We came up together, drove out, took photos of the letter. The yellow enforcement tape someone looped around my shed. Pour the tire ruts along the side track. And she said 4 other families had complained this year, all near Silver Mesa. The next dawn, a blinking red dot winked from a pine, not a star. A cheap trail camera pointed at my window, and a hooded figure ghosted 10 yards from the trunk. When I pulled it down, calm hands, no panic, trained enough to move like he'd done this before. I took it to Tessa. We rolled the SD card, got a close shot of a face half hidden, and a message spelled out in posture. This wasn't random. This was a system. So I drove to the gate. The guy in the vest that said Community Enforcement Officer glanced up only when Bear huffed against the window. Funny how respect appears when teeth do, and buzzed me through when he saw my badge. Graham Wilder met me at the top pad in a house with a foyer big enough for a parade float. Smile like a lawyer and eyes that never warmed. Your patrol knocked on my door, pretending to be law. I told him that's a felony. He tilted his head and couched his answer in homeowner association-ese. Fire buffer runoff visual cohesion. Like that gave him jurisdiction over my pines, and I told him I wasn't in his neighborhood, not on his map, not under his thumb. He said the county runs on relationships. I said I can smell a threat when it's wearing cologne. That night, I buried sensors at the tree line hung my own cams laid out. A silent alarm, like the ones we used on task force ops. And at 2:14 a.m., it buzzed once on my wrist. 3 figures near the generator, 2 at the pour. One with a wrench and more swagger than sense. And when I stepped out and put a single round into the sky, the valley answered, and the crew scattered like crows, clean cuts on the sheathing, telling me they weren't kids. They were trained and paid. Morning brought a plateless black SUV idling at my drive. A man in a charcoal suit stepped out. Like the mud offended his shoes, handed me a card. Nate Hollis, property consultant, and offered a friendly path through a forest of fake rules. I told him he had 48 hours to tell Wilder to back off, or I'd hand my footage and his letter to the county attorney and every news desk with a dial tone. He smiled like patience and left like retreat. I don't like playing defense, so I went to the clerk and pulled everything with Wilder Group on it, permits, overlays, stamped maps, and found what I expected, a stack of copy-paste filings. Boundary lines, pushed where they didn't belong. An influence zone, puffed out like a belly under a belt, all designed to confuse a tired desk and move the line by inches until the county forgot where it used to be. On my way home, I took coffee at the Davenport Ranch. Iris slid a shoebox across her kitchen counter. Midnight patrol photos. Bogus liens. A letter threatening foreclosure over a barn color on land that wasn't in the HOA. Hank stood by the window, arms crossed, jaw set like a gatepost. And when I asked if they planned to be the ones who didn't fold, he said, "We're old. We know how to stand." The third morning before first light, the alarm buzzed west perimeter. I moved low along the dry creek bed, Bear close and quiet. And there he was, the plastic badge kid, digging like payday a metal box half buried by my shed. "Hands," I said, and watched his shoulders drop the way a man's do when he realizes his boss will never come save him. He was bleeding from his lip shaking, and he said, "They're going to bury me next." And yeah, I believed him. Inside the box, cash in band stamped Wilder Group. Parcel C, a flash drive in a sandwich bag. A typed list of names with one ugly word next to each. Buy, push, threat, remove. My name slashed in red under remove. I called Tessa. She cuffed him, Parker Doyle, and we rolled the drive on my laptop. Forged permits, scanned signatures, a folder called Expansion, Coyote Ridge, that pulled parcels 5 miles beyond Silver Mesa into a district that didn't exist yet. We didn't get to celebrate being right. A roar hit the cabin before the concussion slapped the porch. My shed blew like a signal flare. A second blast walked the generator sideways. Sparks climbed into the dark like prayers answered. We stood and watched it burn, because some fires are messages, and you read them by heat. Back off or burn with it. Tessa made me sleep at the Davenports that night. Bear curled by the stove, the storm shouldered the roof, and just past midnight, a soft tap hit the window. I slid it up 2 inches with the barrel steady, and there stood Nate, soaked and shaking eyes. Hollowed out, suit ruined. "I planted the box," he whispered. "Wilder isn't the top. There's a man above him, money from out-of-state shell companies, a judge, people who talk disappear. The Parkers at Ash Fork, they called it suicide. It wasn't. I can prove it." He reached into his coat, and I saw the red dot. A sliver. Before the crack yelled. Down glass burst. Nate folded into the rain. Bear erupted like thunder. I grabbed at his coat and pulled out a sealed drive and a note that read, "If I don't make it, everything is on here. Password 911. Ash Fork." We slid the drive into Tessa's office computer and watched the rot spill. Audio of Wilder threatening a young man at a table, a rezoning approval signed by Judge Malcolm Reddick, the same man who hugged me at my wife's funeral. And in my chest, something hard turned and settled. Deputy said Wilder's house was empty. Flight bag, gone a map on his desk, with my land. In thick red and an X scratched deep near my creek. "What's out there?" Tessa asked. "Let's go find out." We hiked in the rain before dawn. Bear went stiff near an old duck blind beneath it. A trap door, hinges. Oiled lock, new and down in the bunker. Radios hummed. Servers purred the far wall, held faces with those same brutal labels. Mine dead center, with a red slash. Judge Reddick stepped out of the dark, with a pistol wearing a can voice, smooth as a bedtime story. The HOA is a tool, zoning water energy money, wants land. And we move lines until counties fold, and I told him people aren't lines. My hand found a flare in my pocket. I cracked it on the wall. White light burst. Bear lunged. The shot went wide. I tackled him and bent his wrist until the gun scraped the floor. The monitors woke to a bald man with a silver beard. Elias Crane. I designed these projects. Wilder sells Reddick stamps. We've done this in 4 states. He said, removing obstacles isn't personal, and then he smiled, like he was proud of the math. The bunker shook as Tessa's people hit the stairs. We cuffed Reddick, yanked drives, boxed the operation, and the only thing left of Crane in that room was the aftertaste of his promise. A week later, we leaked that Reddick was naming names. Bait, and a jet tail number we'd been watching hopped from Albany to our little Yellow Creek strip under private guns. We cut the fence at dawn, moved quiet muzzle flashes, blinked us into an ambush. We hit dirt, returned fire, and when I flanked left, I saw Crane shouting into a phone at the foot of the wooden stairs, fear finally finding his face. He reached for a pistol he shouldn't have been carrying near an airplane, and I put him down with a knee and the weight of 6 months behind it. "You burned my shed," I said. Breath steady. "You put a red slash through my name." "Why?" He coughed a laugh. "Because I could. The feds rolled in like a tide took Crane. We took the shooters. Warrants bloomed across 4 states. Wilder got grabbed, stepping off a ferry with a golf bag full of cash. Like that would make him invisible. And my neighbors showed up with hammers, pies, and a flagpole. We set it in concrete. Every dawn I run the rope and watch the colors climb while Bear sits like it's church. 2 weeks after Crane pled not guilty with a straight face, an envelope with no return address landed in my box. Thick black paper, a pine tree ringed by 12 stars embossed in the corner. No words, just a symbol I'd only seen once on a redacted memo when I wore the badge. I stood at the rail, Bear leaning against my leg creak, talking like it always does, and I told myself something simple. Quiet isn't surrender. Quiet is aim. That's my story told the way I'd tell a friend at a kitchen table with strong coffee. Do you think I was right to push back the way I did? Or should I have let the system chew on it longer? Have you seen fake authority make good people small? A vest with letters, a clipboard, a smile that never reaches the eyes. Drop me a comment. Tell me where you stand, what you've seen, what you'd do if your name showed up under remove. Because sunlight and stubborn folks are the only things that end this, and I plan to be both.